Tampa Bay. We buck 'em up when we raise the flag. Fire the cannons and seize the day. The crew's ready, all hands on deck, no parley. Down in Tampa Bay. We buck 'em up, we buck 'em up, we buck 'em up. Down in Tampa Bay. We buck 'em up, we buck 'em up, we buck 'em up. Down in Tampa Bay.
What is up, Bucs Nation and Loose Cannons? I'm your boy Sammer, and you're watching another Loose Cannons podcast. My boy Stank and Latte could not be here tonight, unfortunately, but they are safe. Nothing going on. So I'm going to have to do this one solo tonight, boys. I'm looking for you guys to hook me up in the chat with some commentary. I'll do my best to answer some questions, but in the meantime, we got a game to talk about, and obviously the Bucs lost to the Detroit Lions 20-6 in a game that, if you were a box score Bob, as I like to call those guys, you would think the Bucs got their asses handed to them, but that was definitely not the case. I think that when you go into a game like this, like when you went into the game against the Eagles and even the Saints, you want to see that your team at least belongs on the same field. And yesterday, I definitely think the Bucs belonged on the same field as the Detroit Lions, who everybody right now is trying to force into this NFC contender, box that I don't think they fit in. Are they a good team? Yeah, I don't think they're a great team. They're not in the same sentence as the Eagles. Definitely not the same sentence as the 49ers. They're in the conversation, but these are different level of teams when you start talking about those two guys. But I got to start kind of where, a lot of people want to try to shift the blame of what happened yesterday, and blame kind of goes everywhere when you lose a game or you look like that. And some of it, can be had by all parties. But I want to start kind of at the top and talk about this defense, where a lot of people tried to make it seem like this was on those guys. Listen, this team went in every single week this season saying we need to hold teams to 17 points, we'll score 20, and we will win almost every single time, if not every time. That's our recipe. And yesterday, the Bucs held the Lions to 20 points. And you could argue technically they held them to 17 because that tip pass in the first quarter ends up, they hold them in the red zone to 3 and out, force a field goal, save the Bucs again like they have all season as a defense. And so I can't really pin that one on them. They did exactly what they're supposed to do in that moment, which is the only thing they could have done better was force a turnover, which again is not likely. So they held the Lions to basically 17 to 20 points, and the Bucs mustered up 6 points. Now, if we're focusing on the defense, I think they played their asses off, but they did do some things not so well. And if we're going to talk about those things, it's right off the bat is the money down. It's the third down. The plays on third down, when you have an opportunity to get off the field, you got to get off the field. And against the Lions, they just didn't do it. I mean, they were giving up 9 out of 16 on third down efficiency. That you can't give up a 56% clip like that to a team that can, one, score points. Even if you're holding them 10 points below their average, you just can't give them more opportunities, especially on third down. And a lot of those third downs were over 5 yards. And so, again, you're in a position that you're basically preaching on the first 2 downs. Let's get them to this on third, and let's get off the field. And 9 out of 16 times, you're not doing that. You're not holding them to what you're supposed to do. And then on top of that, 2 of those were 3rd and 10s that end up being touchdown passes. So, again, you're not expecting to hold this team to 0 points. You're not going to do that in the NFL nowadays. You're not going to hold the team to 6 points, even though they did that to us, unless the other team helps you out. But you have to be able to contain them on third downs when you have a chance to do so. And, I don't like to pin the blame on defense on one particular player, but it's becoming more and more obvious as the weeks go on, even while we're winning, that the weak link on this defense is Ryan Neal. And I understand that we went out there, we went to grab, we went and made it a point to get him. He's a really good deal, the bargain bin type of guy, but we got to be honest here. When you come into this Todd Bowles defense, it's not something you can just pick up and just hit the ground running. We've seen guys come in here as veterans during that little 3-year window we had with Tom Brady on defense that took time to get acclimated to the system, to understand the responsibilities, to understand the communication that goes on with it and how exotic it is, especially on the back end. You think that the corners and the safeties are not playing very exotic, but they really are. And again, I'm not going to pretend like I even know what half of that or 90% of that even is. I just know from what players have said and what coaches have said that this is not a very simple defense to pick up. So I say all that to kind of give Ryan Neal a little bit of credit in terms of he's, kind of working against the grain here and trying to learn this scheme on the fly and also being the guy back there. But he is a safety. And that literally means that you are the safety valve for the defense. You are the last line of defense. And when you have a guy next to him, an Antoine, who is basically the Swiss Army knife that Todd Bowles likes to utilize on defense, he's got to be able to move him around. He's got to put him in these linebacker type roles. He's got to be able to have him blitzing off the edge. He's got to have him spying quarterbacks or tight ends and kind of being, again, exotic, being a jack of all trades. But if you're going to do that, you got to know that the guy behind him, 9.5 times out of 10, is in the right spot. And I don't need him to make plays. I don't need him to make interceptions every single time the ball's in the air. I don't need him to bat balls down. I don't need him to jar footballs loose. But man, half of your job as a safety is to be in the right spot. Because if you're in the right spot, one of two things happens. You make a play, or they don't throw it at you. And we're seeing all of those things are why we don't see the opponent throwing the ball against and towards Antoine. Antoine is now a guy that teams are scheming around. They're not going to throw the ball. Wherever Antoine is, we're going to go to, guess who? Ryan Neal. We're going to go to, guess who? Jamel Dean, Carlton Davis. All of these guys, like linebackers in coverage, we're going to pick on everyone but Antoine because he's so good at what he does. And the things that he does so damn well are understanding how to read the offensive play, dissecting a play before it happens, understanding what's happening on the fly because he's done so much studying and he understands the playbook and he understands what the offensive scheme that he's facing is doing. He also tackles really damn well. And he also gets to the ball and understands how to anticipate all these things, and he always takes good angles. I mean, 9.5 times out of 10, yeah, I'm going to use that same phrase again, Antoine uses a correct angle. Whether the play has been given up from the guys in front of him or not, he uses a correct angle and has more than once saved touchdowns for us. And so you have a guy like that doing all those things correctly, and then you have a guy opposite him doing all those things incorrectly. If you're a safety, you learned in high school as a corner and a safety, if the guy is even with you and you haven't turned your hips, you're beat. That's it. Game over. You have to anticipate within that 4 or 5 yard range that you got to turn and start running. Because if not, they have full speed. You're backpedaling. It's not going to work out. We saw that on the touchdown from the Lions when, again, Ryan Neal not moving, is doing fundamentals, technique, things like some of that stuff can be coached. But some of that stuff is also kind of natural and second nature and instinct. And right now, he's just not doing those things well enough. And to see that and to kind of put the other 10 guys in a position where he's kind of making it more difficult for them, it's time to kind of look in the mirror at that point as a defensive coordinator, as a head coach, as a secondary coach, and just say, you know what? We have a guy in D. Delaney who, when we put him in the lineup at safety, at corner, any position we've asked him to play, specifically safety, he's played damn well. And if I would have said this to you 3 years ago, you would have thought I was crazy because he was terrible. But he's learned the defense. He's been here longer. So he automatically has a better opportunity, right? And a better chance to make more plays and be a meaningful impact guy. And you know what? Even if he's not impactful, I don't want to hear his name. And that's almost great. That's like an offensive lineman. If you don't hear their name, they're not doing anything wrong. That's almost the case for safeties. And I think D. Delaney has earned himself a chance to be the starter back there. I think it's time to put a pause on the Ryan Neal experiment, as we call it, or the program, and let him sit on the sidelines. Let him see things from a different light. Let him get more acclimated to the system in practice and maybe the playbook and they call it the classroom. So I think it's time that we give D. Delaney that chance, because here's my thing. If he ends up being worse, I can't see that being something I can knock the team for, because they saw a deficiency. They tried to fix it. If it didn't work out, it didn't work out. Pelagic Computer donates $10 here. Thank you so much. Canales, the concept, structures, route, philosophies are awesome. Guys are wide open like I've never seen. But his play calling, sequencing, and situational decisions were not good yesterday. We're getting to that. Don't worry. And another super chat. Baker, like we've seen all season, minus the Saints game, missing too many wide open explosives a lot for touchdowns. He has to execute better, has to capitalize on those opportunities. I'm definitely going to touch on the offense. But back to what I was saying about D. Delaney. I think it's time to just let this guy go in there and see if he can do any better. And I think he will do better. When he was thrust in the lineup, I think against the Saints, he played the entire back half, the third quarter, or from the second quarter on, so back 3 quarters, sorry. He played exceptionally well. He made plays. He's gotten his hand on balls a lot of times in every game he's been out there. And I think you're doing your defense a disservice by having them play their asses off like they did yesterday and basically just give up the momentum that they're creating on defense. And they held their own yesterday. They held the entire team in the game. And the offense eventually has to come to the rescue. Like, you have to eventually help your defense out. They didn't play it too many plays. I think they only had 69 total plays, but if you look at the time of possession, the Lions dominated. They had like 13 minutes more than we touched the ball, which, again, that's 3 and out on offense, and again, putting your defense out there, and they still played exceptionally well. You're going to look at the yardage, and you're going to look at the passing yards. They did a good job, man, and so, again, when they play that well, and somebody like Ryan Neal kind of spoils it, and again, the offense also spoils it, it kind of makes the whole thing feel ugly when it's really not ugly. You're holding a team to 20 points in 2023. That's good enough to win, man. We saw this last year with the Tom Brady-led offense. We're seeing it again now here for a little bit, and I think it's kind of putting the team in a weird position to where the defense has to be perfect, and the offense is just kind of being given this, I don't want to say a pass, because I think they have higher expectations for themselves too, but it's just too difficult to do that when you're not playing complementary football, which is my next point. And again, focuses on stuff that Pelagic was touching on, which is the Bucs offense. They sucked yesterday, top to bottom. I mean, Canales will tell you that. Todd will tell you that. Baker told us that. They sucked. And I don't want to say that Baker had a terrible game, because I don't think he did. I think the scheme and the game plan started off just terribly. And I think it started when the Bucs decided to go into this game thinking that this Lions defense was going to dominate their offensive line. I think they gave them too much respect and too much credit, and you could tell by the way that they were running plays, because they were calling these quick 2-3 step drops, get the ball out of Baker's hand quickly, try to make sure that the offensive line isn't put in a position where they're going to have to pass protect for more than 4 or 5 seconds, and get the ball out of Baker's hands before he gets sacked. And you saw that, but they were doing this against a defense that was anticipating that. The Lions had 10 men in the box almost every single play. I mean, I'd say like 90% of the time they were in 10, the box was just stacked. I'm not joking, 10 men in the box. They had one single high safety, and they were just like, all right, I guess not 10 in the box. Let's say 8 in the box. Let's say 7 in the box. Either way, more guys than we have to block. And so the whole point of what I'm making here is that when you're running these quick little routes that are 2-3 yards, and you're running wide receiver screens, and you're running slants, and things of that nature that are kind of called man beaters, but you're running into this convoluted, muddy area that's the box, what do you expect to happen? I mean, the Lions were jumping the routes the entire game. And it started from that possession that we saw with the tip pass that turned into an interception for Baker. They knew what was coming. They jumped that route. That was not by design to be a pump fake and go over the top to Mike Evans, who ends up being open. That's 1-2, put your foot in the ground, throw the ball. Oh, shit. The corner read what I'm about to throw to Mike, held the ball, somehow squeezes it back, Baker, and then Mike basically improvises and goes above him, and it's a good broken play. I'm like, oh shit, we're going to score because of a broken play. Ends up getting tipped. It doesn't work out, obviously. So that happened all day. And not only just from the passing standpoint, but again, from the running standpoint. You're just running into these convoluted boxes, and that you know it's not gonna create opportunities for your guys. And there was just no adjustment. And so, like, we kind of sat through it in the first half thinking, all right, halftime, I know it's kind of it's not real. They say halftime adjustments, but Canales has shown every week this season so far that he makes changes as the game goes on from the second quarter to the third quarter. He adjusts. He has almost like a backup game plan. And so I anticipated that would happen. And so in the third quarter, they come out, 2 plays, they're all of a sudden in the red zone, right? And they don't capitalize, don't get a touchdown. Some iffy, officiating going on there, but regardless, you gotta kind of overcome some stuff like that. Every team has to deal with it. They didn't adjust. They went right back to not throwing the ball down the field, not really taking advantage of a secondary in the lines that's not that great, and they held their own against the defensive line. So I didn't understand not only the game plan, but like Pelagic touched on, the sequencing of the games of the game plan, the play calling itself. There was no wrinkle put into anything. It was very vanilla. It seemed very simplified. Again, as if they were too scared of the Lions defense heading into the game. And so we saw a lot of motion and misdirection and eye candy, things like that in the Saints game. And I said, okay, this is what this offense is supposed to look like. It's very reminiscent of what you saw with the Rams. You see it with the Dolphins, the Niners. A lot of eye candy, a lot of motion, things that create misdirection with the defense and uses the defense's speed and aggressive nature against them and creates opportunities for your guys, get your guys in space and lets them make plays. We didn't see any of that. It was very, very, very stiff. It was very just boring. I mean, I think I saw Chris Godwin scoot closer to the line, to the end of the line a couple of times. Kate Otten maybe crossed behind Baker a couple of times on actual motion, but there was no motion. There was nothing that created mismatches and nothing that gave Baker any keys to what was happening on defense, even though it wasn't that crazy. I think they were anticipating that their defensive coordinator, who played under Todd Bowles and runs a very similar system, was going to be very exotic like he's been. And they just weren't. They just anticipated what the Bucs were going to do, and the Bucs didn't have an answer for it. Now, people want to say Baker played a terrible game. Listen, Baker didn't play a perfect game. I'm not going to sit here and sugarcoat it. But every guy's going to have a game like that. Every guy's going to have a game where he's just not on. But to his point, or to his credit, it's very difficult to play quarterback when your one or two read, scheme or game plan is taken completely out when they're jumping those routes. And so he looks jumpy and he's looking around. There's nowhere to go. He buys a little bit of time, makes a couple plays out of nothing. But there really was no flow to anything. And there was no flow to the run game. There was no flow to the passing game. There were, again, no wrinkles set up on anything schematically and game plan wise. But then on top of that, when you do have a shot, you gotta hit the shot, man. Like, you gotta hit the shot. And some of those plays have been Baker not seeing the guys in previous games. And yesterday he had the plays there. And he took the two shots. One of them, he overthrew him 100%. The other one, I think if Trey Palmer doesn't look like he slows down looking for the ball, can't find the ball, I think maybe that ends up being a completed pass. I think he throws it right. But those are a little bit difficult to throw because you're anticipating him beating his guy and getting to a point. You got to throw it to that point. You can't throw it when he's open. All of that, whatever. Baker needed to play better yesterday. But to think that he could have shouldered that entire offense in that game yesterday and won, I mean, that's like Tom Brady type shit to ask him to do, and he's not Tom Brady. And we saw Tom Brady not be able to do it last year, and he is Tom Brady. So a lot of that stuff, again, it's hard to pin a lot of blame on one person when it comes to the offense side of the ball. But this team is designed in a way that, other teams can win when they don't play complementary football. And when they do play complementary football, they're almost guaranteed to win. The Bucs can't win unless they play complementary football. And that means the defense doing their thing, which is hold the teams to 17 points per game, which is their average right now. And then the offense coming out there and scoring 20 points a game. Would they like to score 30? Absolutely. We haven't seen it happen, obviously, in a very long time. So when they don't play complementary football, they're not set up to win games. They just aren't. They aren't set up to be in a shootout currently. They don't have that approach. They don't have that deep of a playbook yet. They don't have, they don't have the experience to do that. And when I say experience, I say Dave Canales. Like, listen, he's been up and down. I think he's been more good than bad. He had a little bit of a speed bump there against the Eagles. Again, the best rushing defense or top 3 rushing defense in the league. Amazing defensive line, very aggressive, very physical team on defense and offense. And he didn't have a good day. And he said it himself. And he said, I don't want to keep running into a brick wall just to run into a brick wall. Yesterday was another one of those days that Canales did not have a good day. He just didn't have a good day. And I think eventually he will be a good play caller because you see a lot of things there. But yesterday's game, the game plan was not good. The energy of the team was not there in terms of the offensive side of the ball. They just weren't very crisp. They weren't very aggressive. They weren't awake. Yesterday after the game, Rashad even said, we didn't seem to have a sense of urgency. He said we looked rusty. And that's something I don't want to hear from a team coming off a bye week, especially in the bye week being week 5. Like, you shouldn't be rusty. I don't understand what that means, and I'm sure he doesn't mean it in the way that I'm going to break it down as, but nonetheless, you should have a sense of urgency going into a game like that. Your team got flexed to a 4:30 like slot. That, like, you're the game. You got to be awake for these games. You got to come alive. There's no excuse for that. No energy. There's no excuse for that. And then Canales didn't have himself a good game. He just, again, I think it starts from the top down. So it's very hard again to pinpoint blame on one specific area. But if, a lot of what the Bucs are doing right now is kind of to my next point, which is their offense is predicated on being able to run the ball, not with 100-yard days, but effectively to where it allows them to set up the rest of their offense. Their offense runs off of play action. Like, you got to be able to run the ball like the Seattle Seahawks did last year in order for Geno Smith to do what Geno Smith did last year. And unless you do it that way, this offense is going to be sort of, operating on one leg. Like, it's very difficult for them to force the issue with what they want to do schematically if they can't run the ball. And I think you can say that for a lot of teams, but this team, specifically because of the way they're calling plays, the way they're scheming their plays, and the way Canales is operating and kind of bringing that system over, if they don't run the ball just even decent, it does not work. And listen, 7 carries to your starting running back, it's not enough, man. And I say it's not enough thinking in my head, that's kind of laughable because you could have thrown the ball 50 times yesterday and gone down the field and probably won the game because it was right there to be had. But you have to be able to get your guys the ball. And you got to come up with ways to do that works against the defense you're facing. If they're plugging up the middle, man, call something off tackle. Call a jet sweep. Call something that moves around. Like, call a stretch play. Give me something that lets these offensive linemen figure things out and gives the running back some time to dissect what's going on and then make a cut and go. But too often it's give the ball to Rashad, give the ball to Sneak Vaughn, and they don't even have time to see what the offensive line is doing. Even if they have a hole, they're being met in the backfield almost every single play. Like, that's inexcusable. I don't care who that's on. I'm not going to sit there and understand the offensive line. I'm not going to pretend like I do. I'm not going to say, oh, that's on so-and-so, he should have blocked. That's not my job. I'm not supposed to know that stuff. But they should know some of that shit. And so people are saying, go get Jonathan Taylor, go get Zach Moss, listen, you could have had Barry Sanders back there, and what was he going to do? I mean, he's getting tackled almost every single time if he's got a guy right in his face right as the ball's handed off. And for those of you who want Taylor, or obviously he's not the guy to be traded for, but earlier in the season, let's look at what he did last year when he had an offensive line in Indianapolis that couldn't block for him. He looked like a pedestrian running back. These guys have to have blocking to be able to do their job. It's like telling, a guy at McDonald's to make you burger or a Big Mac, but the guy before him didn't pick up the frozen meat patties. Like, you can only make so much tuna fish without tuna fish. You know what I mean? It doesn't work. And so a lot of that has to be figured out from Canales. You got to figure out ways to do it, man. If your team is not grasping the zone blocking scheme, try something else. Get some shit that they did well 2 years ago. Figure it out. Because there's just too much talent right now for this team to not be able to score points. Like, they should be scoring points. They should be able to, especially with what we're seeing from Luke Gedeke. I mean, what? How is this guy looking so? He looks amazing right now. We went into this game thinking this is the matchup that he's going to struggle against. This is the game that he's really going to be, tested and kind of judged on, which is Aiden Hutchinson. Guy who's got at least 6 pressures in every single game this season heading into this game, right? So we're expecting something is going to happen. Our guy's either going to stand up or our guy's going to fall apart. Luke Gedeke held him to 1 pressure. He had 1 total, one tackle and 2 assisted tackles and 1 pressure on the quarterback. Luke Gedeke just stonewalled him almost the entire game. In his 15 reps that he had against him one-on-one, he won every single rep, even with the quarterback pressure. So he stood up. And you have Tristan Wirfs on the left side who's doing everything that Tristan Wirfs is supposed to be doing because he's Tristan fucking Wirfs. And then you got the 2 guys in the middle in Mock and in Feeler who I think are playing decent enough for this team to be able to move the ball. You've got to figure out ways to take advantage of your skilled players on the offensive line. We have a guy in Hainsey, or like we call him Bob Hennessy, who's athletic, man. Why am I not seeing him pulling? Why don't I see a pulling guard? Why don't I see these guys moving around and doing things that they do well in space? Mock was a monster in college when he was pulling. Same thing in the Senior Bowl. Like, to not be able to take advantage of those guys' skill, it's not just about how you're going to get Devin Tompkins the ball and have him run around on an end around. It's not just getting Trey Palmer the ball and making Trey Palmer, use his talents and be as exotic as he can be as a wide receiver and as a playmaker. Man, it's also about taking those guys on the offensive line and using what they do well and using it to your advantage. Right now, we're not doing that. Like, why this team is so good at pass blocking and so bad at run blocking makes no sense to me. They're not they're not too nice. Like Mock is an angry player. I feel like Gedeke is a very angry player. He'd be talking about eating glass. I mean, Tristan Wirfs is the dog. What are we like? What are we missing here right now? Is it really the scheme? I mean, if we're looking like this in week 8, there's a fucking problem. Like I can't put it on the running backs yet because I just can't. Because I can't see how they could possibly get in a rhythm if they're not being able to run the ball consistently when you're going 3 and out. Nobody's in a rhythm there, right? But then on top of that, the play itself is not in rhythm. When you're getting the ball as a running back and you're going, like you got to be able to get in that flow, man. I'm not going to pretend I'm a running back either, by the way. But you got to be able to get in that flow. And if you can't get in that flow because you're avoiding a tackler almost immediately, like how are you ever going to get your feet underneath you as a running back? And so I can't say, I'm not pretending that Rachaad White is Derrick Henry. And I'm not also going to pretend that he's what's his face that we drafted, Snoop Dogg's nephew or whatever. He wasn't that. I don't know what he is because he's never been given an opportunity to actually play consistently behind a line that knows how to block and can get him lathered up. Like these guys are like fighters. They got to get lathered up. Now, so like a lot of those things just are mind-boggling to me. And so the running game right now is a massive issue. And Todd Bowles kind of touched on it a little bit today and yesterday and said that we got to do certain things better. We've got to work on scheming things around what the defense is doing and giving us. If they're going to give us the pass, we got to take advantage of it. And a lot of that was happening yesterday. Like that defense was begging the Bucs to pass the ball behind the linebackers and into the secondary. They were begging them to throw the ball, and the Bucs just could not take advantage of it. They just could not take advantage of it. And being able to stop their pass rush, being able to create enough time for Baker to where I don't think they should have gone with only 2 and 3 step drops. And again, holding Hutchinson to basically nothing. You can't go into that and see all that happen and not score more than 6 points, man. You just can't. And like a lot of Bucs fans love Mike Evans, myself included. Like everybody understands that. Everybody understands what Mike Evans is, okay? He's a dude. But, man, Mike will be the first person to tell you that he can't drop balls. He can't have whatever is going on anywhere contract-wise. Nothing can be a distraction and have you drop balls, man. You can't drop passes like you have this year. You can't drop passes in the first quarter where it seems like we're building momentum, big play. You get a third down conversion, which, again, is something that we struggled with yesterday. We were 2 of 12. Like, that's pathetic, man. And our third downs weren't 3rd and 10. We were in 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. And we're just not converting. You have to convert those. And a lot of that will fall on Chris Godwin. A lot of that's going to fall on Mike Evans. You're the possession receiver, man. If we throw the ball to you and you cannot convert, I'm sorry. You're going to be the first person to tell me that you got to be better. And I'm not going to pretend that I can't put some of that on you. Mike Evans has to be better. He'll be the first person to tell you he's got to be better. But a lot of what was happening yesterday was just the scheme and everything. I don't understand it, man. And I'm not going to pretend like I know better than these guys because I don't, obviously. But, just too much, man. And to Pelagic and Peter's point, all 22 now, that pick was 100% on Baker. Mike was early from the jump. Oh, Mike was open early from the jump. Play action made the DB bite. Baker hesitates with the pump. Okay, well, I was at the game, so it looked different to me because, again, I'm not seeing it on replay, but put it on Baker. That's fine. He saw the ball at least and then ended up getting tipped. So, listen, nobody played great yesterday on offense other than, I think, the offensive line in terms of pass blocking. Gedeke, again, tip of the cap. Dude is a guy so far. Jonas says, Brant O'Neill says, I'd rather see Trask at this point. Okay, man, sure. I mean, what have you seen from Baker that tells you that? That's neither here nor there. Rachaad did have a run where he actually hit the hole with speed, but they just missed too many throws to keep the ball going and shit. I agree. No, Hutchinson was moved over the D-line, so he wasn't shut down. No, Don, he didn't have any pressures, man. I don't know what to tell you. He could have moved around and played nickel safety. Doesn't matter. He didn't have a pressure. Or he had one pressure. Sorry, he didn't have more than one pressure. So it doesn't matter where he was sitting. It didn't matter. He's having issues this year with drops. Yeah, I think you're talking about Mike. I'm going to scroll back up here and see some of the stuff that I missed during that whole spiel. Lions have a top 3 run defense. Yeah, Gary, that's a good point. Like you're going against a team that is very good at stopping the run. you got to still be creative, man. You gotta come up with ways to get the ball to your running back. You got to be able to run plays that I call extension of the run, where it's like a pitch or swing route. Get the ball to where it feels like a running play, a screen pass. For like, damn, call a screen pass to a running back just once. Do something that uses that defensive line against themselves and slows everything down. Like, you got to take the defense out of whatever they're comfortable doing against you, which is what they were doing all day against us, which is just stack the box and dare us to do anything but what we were doing. And we just didn't adjust. We didn't make the plays. And when the plays were there to be made, they were either overthrown or they were missed or they were dropped. And it just, like, the team just looked lethargic. And Jonas Steckler, you not wearing true Creamcicle gear is the reason we lost. That's not the reason we lost. And so I haven't even touched on the Creamcicles, okay? I haven't even touched on this because it's a massive issue for me. You guys wanted these stupid fucking uniforms. And they came out. And guess what? Guess what came with those uniforms? The terrible Buccaneers. The Succaneers were on display yesterday. It felt like 1980 out there. Good defensive ball and absolutely no offense. And the Succaneers somehow figure out a way to suck. And that's what happened yesterday. And I blame it on the uniforms. 100%. There's nothing but bad juju with those things. We were terrible. They're synonymous with losing. I hope they never bring them back. If they do, maybe just wear the whites. Those Creamcicles were hideous. And the team was hideous. The way they played was hideous. It looked like they were calling plays from back then as well. The same era that those uniforms were in. So, you know what? Nothing went well with those uniforms. I'd like to never see them again. And I know you guys are all so happy you got to see him. Listen, if you enjoyed watching that, then you're not a real fan. Because that was absolutely terrible. I don't want to watch that. I don't care how cool or whatever color is my favorite color. I don't want to watch them play like that in that color. Sorry, it is what it is. I'm glad I didn't wear a Creamcicle. I was never going to wear a Creamcicle, but I did wear a Bucco Bruce short sleeve hoodie, so it counts. There's a little bit of orange on there. That's all that matters. Nancy says, oh my God, so glad I don't have to buy any Bucco Bruce crap. I'm with you. Absolutely. I might still buy a game worn jersey just to put it on the wall because they did kind of look cool to put on the wall, but come on. Mr. Smith says, Samurai, I'll be down for the Falcon game. Hit me up, Smitty. You know how we do. You know how we hang out. Jonas, yes, it was tipped, but should have been fired from the start versus the pump fake. Pelagic Computer still talking about that. Again, a lot of blame to go around, not completely on Baker. Agreed. Listen, they are all to blame, 100%. Aside maybe from the offensive line's pass blocking, everything else on the offense, absolutely to blame. I mean, it's a game, man. It's a clunker. The only thing that kind of worked out for us, like my 5-year-old told me on the way out, was that every other team in the NFC South lost. We're still in first place. And you know what I like about a lot of what we see from this team is the leadership is there. And so when you see a tweet like I saw from Dave Canales earlier today where he was basically saying that you cannot get better if there's no adversity. If there's nothing that goes wrong, how are you ever going to get better? And so he understands. He's not like what we got last year where he just pretended everything he was doing was right and proper and no matter what, I was correct as an offensive coordinator. You have a guy who's looking in the mirror. He's very critical of himself. Baker's the same way too. And so I think that lends itself to success at some point. And him understanding that I got to be better. And him understanding that, you know what, we hit a speed bump. Todd Bowles called it a clunker. I think it was a clunker. Is that the team that I think is going to play throughout the rest of the season? No, because I still think they look like they belonged on the field. Just they didn't play complementary football, which is a massive part of how this team wins. Before I forgot to mention this at the top, guys. Please hit the like button if you're watching. And please, if you're new, smash the subscribe button and leave me a comment. I'd love to hear. I mean, we have the poll here, the chat that I put at the top of who you put the most blame on for yesterday's loss. Bucs defense, 8%. Bucs offensive play calling, 54%. Baker Mayfield, 25%. And the Creamcicles, 13%. And I think it might be the Creamcicles. But, no, I agree. I think it's the offensive play calling that came down to that really yesterday. MXSFT Culture TV donated $4.99, says 3-2 yet still in first place in NFC South. The best Buccaneers are made in calm seas. Stay the course. I agree, man. This is one of those things I've been saying since the beginning of the season is that everything that happens this year, we have to have context with it. We got to have that moment where we relax a little bit, sit back and say, you know what? We gave up 380 yards, but what was the context of those 380 yards? We gave up 2 touchdowns, but how did we give up those 2 touchdowns? On 3rd and 10, can't have that happen. That's where the defense could have been better. Getting off the field on 3rd down. So understanding the context of everything that happens in the season, especially like this one, we're not really expecting much. but also thinking, no, we could be okay. That comes with context. So that's important. That's great that you point that out, man. Can we just say that we are sure shit could have won that game? Yeah, absolutely, Mudfish. That's kind of my point. That's why I'm a little bit upset about this game, and I wasn't that mad about the Eagles game. This game was there. Like, we could have won this game. We connect on 2 of those shots with as bad as we played, we probably win this game. Mike Evans doesn't drop that pass in the first quarter on a massive 3rd down. We probably win this game. Who knows? I mean, maybe not, but it's a massive part of the game. Again, it had another game that against the Eagles. He dropped the pass early on 3rd down, ends a drive. Like, a lot of momentum happens on that first drive as an offense because it's a lot of scripted plays. You kind of go into that, that offensive series sets up a lot of stuff that happens throughout the game. And when you don't get to go through that series and finish that script, you kind of cuck your own team. And when you get off the field and have that 3 and out quickly, it ruins a lot of that momentum. And the Bucs started off on the wrong foot on offense. Defense did everything possible to keep them in that game. And eventually it's just, time of possession and it wasn't even the run game. They just couldn't get off the field when it mattered. 3rd downs is still a thing I got to circle. And like I said earlier, man, it's time to give D. Delaney a shot. Like, just get the guy on the field. He knows the defense more, and at this point, I'll take my chances with that. And he has looked good when he's played, so there's no reason not to, right? Lucas says, how many games is it going to be before they bench Ryan Neal for Delaney? I don't know. I feel like these guys have been pretty good at holding these guys accountable and trying to make sure that they put out their best 11 guys. And I think at this point, they have to look at that and say, Delaney gives us our best 11 guys on defense. I don't care what you signed Ryan Neal to do. You got to do your other guys a solid and help them out. Because at this point, he's the weakest link, and he's clearly the weakest link. Jonas, I'll say this to everyone. If we lose to Atlanta, do we start to panic? It's a little early to panic. I just don't see them losing to Atlanta. They've shown that they've been able to learn from the one loss so far this season. I anticipate that they'll also learn from this. They also learn from the wins. So this is not the Buccaneers of Greg Schiano where they just keep going out there, or Mike Smith and just keep doing the same thing over and over again with Lovie Smith and with Dirk. Like, I think that they are learning, and we just have to kind of take some of these lumps along the way because part of that is that the offensive coordinator is also learning. Family First says Dave called a bad game. Agreed. Neal doesn't look great out there. Agreed. We just touched on that. Always, that's Mr. Smitty takes injury before Todd benches anyone. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's difficult to go to a guy that you say I trust and then take the starting spot from him. I'm sure there's conversations. I'm sure he's looking at the film. I'm sure they understand what's going on, and maybe he's doing things that they think they can correct, and it's stuff that they can correct simple in terms of technique or understanding things or seeing things more and maybe studying harder. Who knows? Like, we got to kind of trust that they know more than we know. We're just fans. I'm just a fan. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like you give me a whiteboard and I'm scheming up something to beat somebody on 4th and 2 to win a Super Bowl. Unlike the Eagles game, this one really sucks because it's the one that we could have won. Agreed, Pelagic. Absolutely agreed. By the way, awesome seeing you out there, man. That was super dope. And the wife, too, the Italian. Mr. Smith says we should beat the Falcons. He says Bills are beatable, in my opinion. Listen, this entire NFL season has shown one thing, that anybody can win and anybody can lose at any moment. Yesterday, 2 undefeated teams lost to teams that you probably wouldn't have thought they were going to lose to. And so, it just happens. It doesn't mean that the Bills are untouchable. It doesn't mean that the Bills are going to be absolute garbage either. So the Bills are up and down. We never know. As long as the Bucs go and play their game and play complimentary football regardless of the opponent, I think they have a good chance of winning because they have a ridiculously good defense right now. A defense that is doing everything, I think, that allows a team in the NFL in this era to win games. San Antonio Gato says the bye made us rusty. I thought that was ridiculous. I'm assuming you're being sarcastic like me. Kancey looked good yesterday. Yeah, I didn't even touch on Kalijah Kancey, man. Bright spot, 100%. I mean, kid was making plays. He ended up getting his first sack, although I thought it was a little late to get that. It didn't really matter too much, but he was everywhere. He was doing exactly what he was supposed to do. First game back. So I think he's going to continue to get better and better. If he gets a sack a game from here to the end of the season, that's massive number at the end of it all. So you just got to make sure you see him do what he does best and see him grow and get better. And he's next to Vita, so he kind of has the advantage there. King Cook, big money Dean and big money CD3 overpaid like a motherfucker. They standing around all game watching St. Brown get off. Yeah. I don't know how to respond to that other than I am critical of, I think Jamel Dean has kind of played up and down this season. It doesn't seem like he's getting his hands anywhere near the balls or the passes that are thrown either towards him or towards guys around him. I don't know. I something feels like he's not being very aggressive. Is he injured? I don't know. Carlton Davis was injured. I don't listen. They're not getting beat badly. They're not getting put in these one-on-one spots and getting roasted. So I can't really say that they're not playing well, because again, the defense as a whole is playing well, and the defensive problems yesterday mostly felt like they're on Ryan Neal. Bad angles, bad tackling. Not understanding the play as it's breaking down in front of you and reacting slowly, reacting too late, those types of things. I think, when you get beat over the top like that, that's usually going to be on the safety. Again, I haven't looked at the All-22, and I'm not saying I'm a defensive coordinator, so I could be completely wrong, but that guy looks like the weak link to me, and I still think D. Delaney probably ends up fixing that if they decide to go that route. And D. Delaney does play a lot of different, positions on the defense. He's very versatile, like Todd told us on a couple episodes ago on here, but Ryan Neal does too, and so you don't really lose the versatility from your backup guy. And people like to say, I like to have really good depth. You got to put your best 10 out, or best 10, 11 out there, man. You just got to. You got to put your best 11 on the field and let it play out how it plays out. If he gets injured, doesn't get injured, go from there at that point. Let me see. Jonas Sticker, hope we see Detroit in the playoffs. Yeah, I'd be interested to see what Detroit does in the playoffs. I don't think they're as good as people think, but I also don't think they're the Detroit Lions of old. So they're kind of in the middle. Mudfish Matt, hashtag spoiler alert, any given Sunday. K. Cook, Dean and CD just played so timid and soft yesterday. I agree, man. They did look timid and soft, but again, you don't know what that scheme was calling for. Maybe that was kind of the thing, keep things in front of us and get off the field. But when it mattered the most on third downs, they weren't up in the face of the wide receivers the way I prefer. And they were in that zone that Todd likes to implement. And, maybe we get to the quarterback quicker. All this looks better. I don't know, man. Still, with all that being said, the defense still played in a way that you should win the game. Like, if you give up 20 points to a team that's scoring 30 points and you can't get more than 2 field goals, I can't put that on the defense. I'm sorry. I can't. I can't put it on the. Could they have been perfect? Yeah. But you're asking them to be perfect and hoping that your offense can be average, which is not fair. Like, this is not Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, John Lynch, Ronde Barber, Brian Kelly. It's not those guys. It's not Simeon Rice out there. Like, this is not dominate with your front four and hope that everything else falls into place because you have a defense that's extraordinarily Hall of Fame worthy. Like, it's not the same thing. So that's the biggest problem, is they have to play complementary football perfectly for them to win games. And that's where we are right now, right? Jonas, chill, bro. First things first, Atlanta. Yeah, there's definitely one game at a time. 24-hour rule, though. This game will be over tomorrow. I'm digging this solo Samer. I love Sting and Poppy, too, though. Thank you. I appreciate that. Doing my best, man. The blitz packages were getting home, but Goff was quick to get the ball away. Got to be even more aggressive next week versus Atlanta's O-line. Listen, Goff and Ritter are two totally different guys. Ritter's a high school quarterback. I'm sorry. I don't care what these guys pretend. They're running a offense that is making sure he doesn't lose the game, which is not a recipe for success in the NFL. Goff is smart. Goff is quick getting rid of the ball, and it doesn't help when your guys are open almost immediately, even with the blitz. And so he took what the defense gave him, and his guys made plays. And whether they made plays by breaking tackles, whether they made plays by taking good angles on the pass, all these things that go into play, they did what they had to do to win the game, and they got out an ugly win. And so I don't see Atlanta having the pieces or the quarterback to be able to do that to the Bucs defense, who has played well basically every single game this season until they got gashed and tired against the Eagles, honestly. Samer's firing off like the ESPN ticker. I love it. Looked like Smith was fed up with Ritter yesterday. Yeah. Go look at that last play and tell me that coach is in love with that guy. They also went to get Lamar. They went start flirting with Lamar Jackson when he was a free agent or impending free agent. So let's not pretend like they're 100% sold on the high school quarterback, because they aren't. And I think he knows that. They know that. And, there's some stuff going on there I think that people will start to see, because, you can't just watch your team try to trade for another guy to replace you and then just trot back on out there and be, oh, honky-dory, I guess I'm still the dude. You're not the dude, man. You're just not the dude. Exactly my point. Ritter has been very shaky so far. Got to take advantage of him early and often. I agree. And I think the Bucs, the biggest thing yesterday, too, is the Bucs didn't get a turnover. And a lot of the games this year, they've gotten turnovers. They've turned the tide. They've helped the offense out and put them in advantageous positions to be able to score and kind of take steal a possession and steal a game. And that didn't happen yesterday. And, credit to the Lions. Listen, we lost to a better team. Yesterday, the better team won. and the lesser team could have won. But I think it's a little bit more evenly matched than people want to say, and definitely more than the scoreboard would indicate. But again, 20 points. Like, I'm hammering this home, man. This defense is not to blame. I know they gave up 2 touchdowns on third down. If we're going to nitpick, yeah, absolutely. Got to be better than that. Got to be better on third down in general. But I can't blame it on them. I'm going to have to, put it on the offense, obviously. And I'm going to put it on the offensive scheme. The play calling just was absolutely terrible yesterday. Guys, I believe my time is basically up here. I'm going to say, before I forget, again, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment, and hit the like button on your way out as well. The more you guys interact with us in that nature, the better we can grow our channel and the more we can do. And if you want to hear more of what I have to say, and my co-host on another show, Fully Loaded, JC Cornell, will be on tomorrow on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, Google Podcasts, wherever you download and listen to your podcast. We will be dropping an episode tomorrow afternoon, probably around 4 o'clock. We'll talk about the game. We'll talk a little bit more in depth. We'll have a little bit more back and forth between myself and JC. But you can always listen to me on that show throughout the week now, Tuesdays and Thursdays, aside from here. And make sure you go, subscribe to that on your podcast platforms as well. And, I don't know what else to say here, man. A 24-hour rule. Bucs could have won the game. They didn't. We're still in first place. Got to tip the cap to Detroit, like Jonas says. Sammer for president 2024. I don't know, man. I don't think people are going to vote too much for me. I might speak my mind a little bit too freely. But, hey, we saw that dude get elected too. Who knows? Honestly, Detroit didn't even do anything special. Just lined up, beat us with their regular package. I agree, King Cook. And when the Bucs offense, allows that to happen, allows it to happen. Brent O'Neill says, how often are you on, bro? We do these shows twice a week here. This week, we'll probably do another show so I can get Latte and Stank on here with me so we can have a little bit more back and forth, because I do like to have the conversations with them to understand what they're seeing and having, play off of, devil's advocate, that whole deal. It's a lot better and obviously makes for a better conversation. And Joey De La Rosa says, you sound like a party pooper. I'm not sure what that means. I thought I'm a pretty good job. And then Mr. Smitty, good job, Sam. I appreciate that, guys. Listen, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on your way out. Please share. And yes, I'm doing my best to figure out how we can get a phone line with our new look and our new platform so that you guys can call in and we can take calls finally. In the meantime, I'll probably put out a voicemail line on Twitter, and we'll figure out ways to get you guys interacting with us on the voice side of things more than we have this season, because we've switched over platforms that allow us to look better and more beautiful. But with that has come the loss of the phone line, so we have to figure all that out. Mudfish, I cannot give you a clap because I will probably break the speaker system I'm connected to currently. But I will say I got a lot of love from the fellow Bucs fans in my section saying I am clapping like an alien. So I consider myself to be the Tom Brady clapping. So maybe you guys come out to a game, find me, I'll clap for you in person. Absolutely. Joey B, I love the Bucs, so I speak on what I see. So it's all love, baby. Yeah, listen, King Cook says a lot in the chat every single episode. A lot of shit he says we may not disagree, we may not agree with, and a lot of shit sometimes I do agree with. And he's open to his opinion. He's allowed his opinion, but he's a good guy. He comes from a good place. I think we all do as Bucs fans, right? We all come from a good place. We want to see our team win, unless you're hoping that they lose. I don't know. But either way, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button again, and find me on Fully Loaded on iTunes and on Spotify. It's myself and my counterpart, JC Cornell. We talk Bucs. We have a little bit inside. Last week we had Devin White join the show. This week we have a couple of big guests lined up as well, and we're going to talk ball as always. So, it's always good for a good conversation. Check it out. Fully Loaded. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on all your follow us on all of your podcast platforms. And of course, this show will also be on audio, available tomorrow. All right, guys. Good night. 24-hour rule. Fuck the Lions. It's on the Atlanta Falcons week tomorrow. In the meantime, go Bucs.
Welcome to Tampa Bay. We fuck 'em up when we raise the flag.